Welcome back to .NET Rocks. This is Carl Franklin.
And this is Richard Campbell.
And I'm recording in my new home office setup studio thing.
You like your new rig?
I do.
Yeah.
But the downside is that I spend so much time sitting in this chair that, I get butt sores. So
Got to get a better chair.
That's the answer. You always have the answers.
As opposed to getting up, because that would be crazy talk. Nobody's going to do that.
That's funny. Well, I got a really interesting Better Know framework that's very timely. So let's roll the music.
All right, dude, what do you got?
New story that just came out today, August 15th. That's when we're recording this. And it's Microsoft and Amazon release a preview of an Alexa Cortana collaboration.
Ooh, they talked about this at Build.
They talked about it at Build, but now if you want to take part in this, you can summon Cortana on Echo devices and Alexa on your Windows 10 PCs and Harman Kardon Invoke speakers.
That's cool.
How cool is that?
I'm still wrestling over why they're doing this. There's, it's so easy for them to just be competitors.
So now I can say, Alexa, format my C drive, and it actually might work.
Because that's a good thing.
It's so much fun.
Oh, my goodness.
That's it. That's what I got. But it's a good story. And this being show 1574, you can get there just by going 1574.pwop.me. Or,
awesome.
You could probably just Google Bing it, too.
Probably could.
Whatever. Who's talking to us, Richard?
Well, considering that our friend Adam Cogan hasn't been on the show since 2006, I figured I probably shouldn't try and grab a comment that's 12 years old, because that
do
wouldn't be
it.
fair. Well, and in 2006, we didn't have a comments engine, so, small details.
All right. You'd have to read an email.
I did grab a comment off of show 1550, which was from May of 2018, when we talked about Azure tooling in Visual Studio with Paul Ukowitz and Andrew Hall.
Right.
And it's not a happy comment, but it's a very direct one. I thought it was super relevant to our conversation. This is a comment from William Gunther, who said, Azure is still too complicated to administer and too many things don't work as described, and costs are difficult to predict or control. In the old days, an enterprise developer spent 90% of his time solving business problems. Now you get to spend 3 days in 5 trying to figure out why your app won't publish to Azure. Grumpy.
Yeah, grumpy.
And I mean, he's not entirely wrong either,
and when was this written?
2 months ago. It's current.
2 months ago.
Yep. The tooling's better. Because we've moved onto Azure, so we've dealt with the problems and the challenges there. It's no question that it takes some time to learn. But there's a bigger thing here. We talk about that old school enterprise developer where he had IT people who put a bracket around how he would do those things, and it was who you would call to support it. And now it's not that simple. You're kind of talking to Azure directly, and you need to know more things. But maybe we can make a show to make Bill's life a little easier.
Nah, let's not do that.
Why would we do that? That's crazy talk. So, William, thank you so much for your comment. A copy of Music to Code By is on its way to you. And if you'd like a copy of Music to Code By, write a comment on the website at .netrocks.com or via any of our social media, because we publish every show to Facebook and Google+. And if you comment there and we read it on the show, we'll send you a copy of Music to Code By.
And definitely follow us on Twitter. He's at Rich Campbell. I'm at Carl Franklin. Send us a tweet. Alexa reads them to Cortana for us.
When
Cortana
digital entities
says, what?
Just start talking to each other. There's nothing good can come of that.
It's so funny. That would be a great comedy routine to have, them just talking, trying to conversate with each other.
The real advantage now with the collaboration is you don't actually have to have 2 devices. You could now have one device talking to itself, right? So effectively, you've made it an Echo schizophrenic.
Yeah. All right. Let's now, us not having a current bio for Adam, he's going to have to update the bio that we read 6 years ago. So I'm going to read that.
12 years ago. It's from 2006.
Oh, my word. 12 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay, so get this. Adam Cogan is the chief architect at SSW, a Microsoft certified partner specializing in Visual Studio.NET 2005. Windows and Web, SQL Server, OLAP, and RS applications. Well, Adam, what have you been doing lately?
You guys are cute reading that old bio. some of it hasn't changed too much. I'm still the chief architect of SSW, still running that. We have multiple offices around the country these days. I spend a lot more of my time dealing with China. We have an office, 2 offices in China these days. And obviously, I do a lot of Azure and a lot of VSTS with the Visual Studio team.
Yeah.
We haven't built an app, or we haven't started a fresh app in 3 years that wasn't .NET Core these days.
Yeah.
Wow, in 3 years.
Yeah, incredible, hey?
And is there still certified partners?
Oh, yeah, they are. But it's not as important as it once was, I don't think.
Yeah, I guess the models have just changed. It used to be, there was a time, and back then certainly was a case where it's like a lot of customers only cared about the Microsoft channel. And now that we've sort of gone in the open source world and there's sort of a broader reach, it's just not as important.
That's right.
And even if you are in the Microsoft world, Core is just so much faster.
Yeah, that's right.
So much faster.
So I heard that comment you made in the beginning, William's comment, and it's a similar comment to what I hear from many of the devs in our company. It is not just, a completely different paradigm. And, if somebody like my company are full of .NET C# guys, Angular guys, React guys, and they also now need to be Azure guys. And Azure is a monster, and they don't know which part of Azure that they're expecting that they want me to get them to learn, or which bits will help their career the most. It's hard.
Well, and it strikes me that these are now becoming fundamental skills. The same way you had to, learn your way around Visual Studio, you kind of have to learn your way around Azure.
Yeah, I tell them it's non-optional. We must know Azure, and then it comes which parts of Azure.
Right. That's a good setup for this whole conversation. So what are the key parts of Azure that every dev really needs to know their way around?
Well, I would say that it would be helpful if there was a nice little navigation flow that each developer is to follow. And, it starts by just deploying your first app and how do you get going? Now, obviously, the easiest way in the very beginning, just to go into Visual Studio and go file a new project, and you can deploy straight from there into Azure. That's kind of the first step.
Right.
But obviously they're trying to decide, look, I've got so many options, should I, VM seem to be the easiest way because I don't have to learn anything, or should I be doing containers or Service Fabric or cloud services, which obviously you don't want to do these days.
Is it easier in Azure to incrementally move things around as the requirements change? Like, in other words, I could start a web app in Azure, just in Visual Studio, get that going, and then I need it to scale up a little bit. So maybe I put it in containers, and in other words, is that a good strategy? I mean, going into a VM obviously is sort of pigeonholing you in there, right? If you're running an IIS in a VM. So I wouldn't even recommend anybody do that anymore.
Yeah.
But starting with an Azure website, is it easy to sort of bounce around once you reach critical mass?
Yeah, I tell the developers, if you're going to go VMs, you're not really you're not learning anything about the cloud.
Yeah.
And you don't want to start off in containers on your first project. If you're a .NET dev, moving to Azure, you probably you want to skip serverless as well, just to get going, because you still want to deliver a project.
Right.
So the first project you should do is just app services. It's the simplest. You don't have to learn very much as a .NET developer, and you'll have success. You don't have to manage the infrastructure. You can still manage scaling and configuration. And it's as simple as just going into the portal and going, click on the create a resource button, choose web app, specify that you're in Australia or America, wherever you are, and press publish, and you're pretty good to go.
Nice. So and then it's just hooked through Visual Studio. You're just publishing directly to the cloud.
Yes.
What if you want to move into container after that?
Well, I would say that shouldn't be your next step generally on most, because you don't want to start your first Azure project on a monster. You've got many steps to go before you get to containers, I'd say.
Yeah.
So what is the next step past just deploying to an Azure website? Because the Azure website to me feels so much like IIS. Anybody who's deployed websites on IIS is going to find it familiar.
Yeah. Developers just don't have a problem doing that. It's easy. And from that point, they're right-clicking publishing, and they're doing everything they probably shouldn't be doing for a little while, but they get used to it.
Right.
So would the next step be breaking it down into parts that need to scale independent of each other? Sort of a microservices architecture?
I would probably say that the next thing you really want to learn about Azure is that brand new DevOps project. Because you want to be deploying, regularly, ideally many times a sprint. If you can get it down, deploying many times a day, if you can really get there. I think if the complexity of the app warrants it, then of course you start breaking it down to microservices. That's important. In the beginning, I would just be making sure they know the DevOps project.
Yeah.
And that's just right-click, publish, Azure DevOps, and you've got CI, CD, logging, the whole kit and caboodle in a few steps. Like it's massively impressive. And then you can put DevOps on your LinkedIn profile as an expert.
So, and is that Visual Studio Team Services you're talking about, or is that a separate Azure DevOps tool?
It is. I will say it's separate, because if you're the old school, you understand DevOps properly, you're using visualstudio.com or a tool similar to it. You're setting up your work items, you're setting up your build, and you're setting up your release or your octopus, and you're deploying nicely. You're looking at the stats coming back. You're looking at all your unhandled exceptions. But you need to be a diligent person to get all that going, or you need someone. You need one of those grumpy old. They look a little bit like a sysadmin and a .NET solution architect rolled into one, and
right.
You need one of those guys on your team. They look a bit like you, Richard, with the gruffer voice.
I'm not actually a nice man. I just play one on a podcast.
Right. But that's kind of confronting all that type of stuff. And so Donovan Brown and the team have built something inside Azure, which is just a simple, create a resource, select DevOps, and choose a couple of things, and you have the whole kit and caboodle done. And it's super, super impressive.
And so the goal then is to automate the deployment process. You literally check in code, and it delivers it right to the website, essentially.
That's right. Yeah. So it's done. You get your life back, and now you're doing all the right stuff. Before you've got into how you're going to split up your app and how you're going to architect it and all the microservices, you've got your source control going nicely. You got your continuous integration working. All the continuous. You can say I'm doing continuous delivery, and the health of my application is good because I'm looking every day at the unhandled exceptions coming in.
So there's also this telemetry part of, can we see what errors are occurring in production? That's
right. And really, you want to do that type of stuff early on so you get used to it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So is that actually a separate tool, or does it just happen by deploying onto the Azure Web Apps?
Well, no, it just connects into Visual Studio Team Services, and you teach the team. There'll be no more right-click publishing. It creates it all, but you have a UI inside, like kind of a front end inside Visual Studio, inside the Azure portal.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go up to any team and say, let me have a look at that at your DevOps, and you'll see that there's a CI/CD pipeline automatically set up. You can have a look at the Azure resources. You'll see on the same screen a graph of your application insights, and you look at that. Like, you will have errors, you'll have slow pages, you'll have all that type of stuff.
Okay.
But the goal is, you ask the team, what is that massive spike there? And if they go, no idea, then they're not looking at the health of the application regularly.
Yeah.
And are you actually deploying into production here, or are you deploying to a staging site in Azure?
Well, you control that.
Okay.
If you're a real man, deploys into production.
You have to have a mustache to do that.
Nice.
Well, you should be deploying into production, really, and you should be using release gates. And you should be hiding new functionality that's not tested yet behind feature flags. And so you are regularly deploying, even though you're not showing everything all the time.
Right. But that represents a whole bunch of new development practices, and we're still just trying to get the fundamentals here.
Yes. And of course, that's not for everyone. So you set up multiple release pipelines, and you can have it going to a test server, to a staging server, and you can go through the normal cycle you go through with a test team, and then deploy it.
Right. And you do have, this is features that are built into VSTS, right? The whole approvals and gates process.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that's all there. And the problem has been, you have to learn all that. And you have .NET guys that just leave all that to later, and they Microsoft couldn't get people stopping right-click publish. And so that's kind of why I say the very next project you work on, if you've never done anything in Azure, just go through, create your project in Visual Studio or VS Code or whatever, or just go to the portal and go App Services, choose that, and then you should go straight for your DevOps, and you're pretty much in a really good place at that point.
You're heading down that path. So you're probably going to spend some time on this DevOps piece, because there's a whole bunch of improvements made there. This can change testing. This can certainly tweak the pipeline, decide what your release gates look like. Like, it's not just a click, okay, now we're DevOpsing.
It is actually. It's so simple. It is a wizard, and you can build on that. That's why I say you can run this wizard and put DevOps on your resume. You are doing it the right way. Now, here's the problem. You're hiding a lot of all the recommended pain to become a proper DevOps, right? And we're now not going to know who knows this stuff and who doesn't, because it's so simple.
And Adam, I got to interrupt you right there for this very important message.
Save the date for .NET Conf 2018, September 12th through 14th. .NET Conf is a free 3-day virtual developer event co-organized by the .NET community and Microsoft. Over the course of 3 days, you can enjoy a wide selection of live sessions that feature speakers from the community and .NET product teams. These are the experts in their field, and .NET Conf is a chance to learn, ask questions live, and get inspired for your next software project. You will learn to build for web, mobile, cloud, desktop, games, services, libraries, and more for a variety of platforms and devices, all with .NET. There are sessions for everyone, no matter if you are starting out or a seasoned engineer. Expect presentations on .NET Core and ASP.NET Core, C#, F#, Azure, Visual Studio, Xamarin, and much more. Head to www.dotnetconf.net. That's .netconf.net to learn more and tune in.
And we're back. It's Carl and Richard here on .NET Rocks, talking to our friend Adam Cogan. Entirely too long. It's been 12 years. about his view on the tools you use in Azure and getting devs focused on building it the Azure way. So, I mean, it's certainly easy to start this CI/CD pipeline to get people away from right-click publish, but it's a pretty rich space to live in terms of all of the things you can do to actually improve your building process over time.
Mm.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Because I feel like moving to web apps is really pretty easy. If you've got an existing IIS app, unless you're writing to disk or anything evil like that, you can get it up to web apps in a few days.
So what's night number 2?
Or is that 3?
Or 3. Are we on 3?
I think we're on 3.
So I assume you're referring to the 9 nights?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. What is that reference to anyway?
Yeah, so I just I do reviews with the guys. Every year I do a long walk with each of the guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's around 10 to 15 kilometers. And I started noticing that I was spending a lot of my time just working through which parts that they need to learn. And so then I started writing them down for each person. And here I have kind of the nine nights that they need to learn in the next 12 months. And I'll consider that they're also they're strong at Azure.
Okay.
And I guess the next one, and by the way, I should mention, Azure is huge in Australia because we have an Aussie cloud. And so not only like Amazon is in Sydney, but we've got Azure in Sydney and Melbourne, plus they've got a dual cloud in Canberra, which is our capital city. And that is 48% owned by the Australian government and 48% owned by the New Zealand government. And so that just means that the love for Azure in Australia is probably disproportionately high in Australia compared with other countries, just because of the deal with the government.
Right.
Sure.
Mm. So the third one I tell them is data. And of course, everybody just knows SQL, and SQL's awesome. But I really think it's crazy important if you want to handle massive amounts of data, be able to have high read writes and near real-time response.
Cosmos?
And Cosmos.
Yeah.
Cosmos is what they need to learn. And it's a bit different. But when the boss comes to them and says, hey, we've got a big marketing campaign going on in, New York, and you go, hang on a sec, I've got all the data in Australia. I need to learn about replication.
Yeah, that's the wrong way.
If you've got Cosmos, it's a flick of a switch, and it's a business decision if you just want to pay the extra dollars.
How many extra dollars are we talking about?
Well, I think, in the beginning, you mentioned that guy, William, who was having trouble getting up and running with Azure. And
Right.
He also mentioned something that was pretty spot on. He has to now worry about the costs of things. Azure is amazingly easy to learn and amazingly easy to be ignorant of the costs. And in fact, how about what we need is, instead of DevOps, we need cost ops.
Nice.
We need practices that when developers choose options, they easily see what dollars is that potentially going to be impacting the business. They need ways that you can write code now and do a check-in, an inefficient check-in, and you've just cost dollars on your, on the monthly bill. And it's the sum of the parts of how these bills get high. And it's, it's a new world. We're at the beginning of this, but developers are now, they're just going to have to, William's going to have to suck it up. He's either going to have to learn replication or learn how much is it going to cost to flick on the switch and put the data right next to all those users in New York for that advertising campaign.
Yeah.
And so is it mistakes that makes Azure expensive, or are there expensive parts of Azure?
Well, yes, it's mistakes. It's all the little choices you make. It's being ignorant of, you know how some developers will say, I don't want to learn anything about security. I'll leave that to other people.
Right.
It's got to that point where that's developers can't be like that.
I'll tell you how I ran up my Azure bill was just anytime I wanted to create a database to mess around with something, I just spun up a new SQL server, and yeah. And after a while, the bill's gone up and I'm like, wait a second, I don't need any more of these anymore. And, some of them that I'm still messing around with, I could just put tables in an existing database called, mess around with me or something.
Right. Rather than set up another one.
Yeah, exactly. And I was able to bring my bill down quite a bit just by cutting those out, because those do jack up the money. They stay on and you pay for them whether you're using them or not.
That's right. On that, there's a checkbox there on when you're setting up your Azure Cosmos DB that says enable geo redundancy. I think that when you check that on, I'd like Scott Guthrie and the team just to whack up a couple of images of lots of piles of dollars. So you're aware, because all these, it's really easy to blow a lot of dollars over time with turning on all those geo redundancy features.
Yeah.
And when you talk about Cosmos.
Yeah, I'm talking about Cosmos. Yeah, Cosmos can be more expensive than SQL Server that Carl mentioned.
Sure.
Yeah.
But Cosmos is much more of the sort of MongoDB document data store model.
Yes.
You're not really writing traditional SQL against it that way either. Although it's interesting to see how many times we're using SQL essentially as a document store. Like we're not really doing relating of data together. We don't need that capability.
Yeah, and if you like Link, it's going to work fine for you,
There is also like that is the choice. When you're doing Cosmos, it's not going to be as simple as doing SQL Server. You have to choose which API you're going to choose, and you can say that's an architectural decision because that one's going to be hard to change later. I believe in Entity Framework.NET Core, that is 2.2, that should be coming out later this year. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a new choice there called Entity Framework API. And that should be super exciting because Cosmos will support Link. It'll be much more familiar to devs who like relational models.
Very good. Hey, Richard.
Yeah, buddy.
Guess what time it is now?
It must be that happy time again.
Yeah, it's time to move my jokes out to the edge of the internet so our listeners will get them faster. Will that work?
Is that a joke delivery network you're talking about? Is that what you're talking about? A JDN?
A JDN. I don't think it works like that, actually.
Well, you got to cache a few jokes out there in the first place.
Every joke is a cache of a previous joke, really.
Right. You're just pre-populating humor. I get that.
It's time to give away a free conference pass to Tech Bash, October 2 through 5, and up to 4 nights at the Kalahari Resort in Pocono Manor, Pennsylvania. Compliments of Progress Telerik. You can check out Tech Bash online at techbash.dotnetrocks.com. But first, let me tell you about the most comprehensive developer toolkit for building modern apps on the market today, Telerik DevCraft. With more than 1,100 Telerik.NET and Kendo UI JavaScript components and controls, you can easily build modern, high-performant web, mobile, and desktop apps, as well as chatbots. The toolset also includes reporting solutions, automated testing, and productivity tools, and comes with a range of support options. New this year is a free online training program for all license holders. With this, alongside thousands of demos with source code, comprehensive documentation, and a full assortment of Visual Studio templates, you'll be up and running with the Progress Telerik and Kendo UI tools in no time. Download a free 30-day trial now at telerik.com/download.
Well, all right, buddy. Who's our winner?
Today's winner is none other than John Holliday.
Congratulations, John.
Yeah.
Golf clap for you.
And John just won a free conference pass to Tech Bash in October at the Kalahari Resort in Pocono Manor, Pennsylvania, just for being a member of the .NET Rocks fan club. And if you'd like to be a member, go to .NETRocks.com, click on the big Get Free Stuff button, answer a few questions, and join the fan club. We have thousands of members all over the world, and every show we like to give away stuff from our sponsors. And every December we give away a $5,000 technology shopping spree to one lucky member of said fan club. But you got to sign up if you want to win. And Adam, it's your turn. If you had $5,000 to spend on technology today, what would you buy?
All right. Well, I have the latest phone, so I'm okay with that. And I have the latest August lock and cam for my house. And that's important. I've got a Fitbit, an Apple Watch, so I've got those things.
Okay.
So I've got all the essentials. I think if I was just going to be spending $5,000 on things, that I would just be using it to learn. And because I have a Chinese office in China, they have an Apple equivalent. It's called Xiaomi. It's mi.com is the site. They have a phone, which is, if you ask me, sexier than an iPhone.
Okay.
They have like when I go and visit the Chinese office, every product they have seems to come from mi.com. All the security products in their houses, all their wearables. Like it is, I'd probably spend that $5,000 on junk from that site so I could just learn.
Interesting. Just tough to experiment with and more engage with China. Is it really that big a part of your business these days?
It's key. We have this service that we provide to customers called Chinafy. It's just what we do. Like we probably am not that different from a lot of consulting companies where our customers make good dollars in Australia, they make good dollars in America, and some dollars in Europe, and then they have 0 users in China. Not even a user.
Right.
And so we Chinafy their apps so that because they authenticate differently, they don't have Facebook and Twitter, so you got to take those little bits out of the app.
Sure.
It's not about the localization. It's about a lot of other. They have a different world over there.
Right. Just a different set of tools, and so you've gone through this, and you can help them get into that market.
Yeah, that's right, and it's bigger and bigger market. I went there with my daughter Ruby for 3 weeks, and we did not use our credit card or cash once the entire 3 weeks. Everything was paid on WeChat Pay or Alipay. Yeah, it's incredible.
That's how they do things.
I even climbed up this mountain with Ruby, and it's called Yellow Mountain, and we got right near the top, and there was this old man who dragged all these drinks up to sell to you when you're exhausted near the top. And all he took was Alipay and WeChat Pay. I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
That's all there was. Like, if you want this drink, you will pay this way.
Huh.
That's right. Yeah, they've sorted out the micropayments, that's for sure.
That's pretty cool. Very interesting.
That is cool.
All right. We talked about Cosmos DB, and obviously there's SQL Azure. What about the other storage mechanisms, the table store, blob storage? Like, do those still make sense, or is Cosmos DB the way?
No, they're all good. People will continue to use SQL Server and Progress, Postgres, and
Document DB.
Yes, I will tell you that soon there'll probably come a warning if you choose any of those options that they're only available to developers over 40 years of age.
Warning, you must be this old to prefer this technology.
Yeah.
No, I think the future is Cosmos. And what you want to do is you want to be diligent in making sure that it's not, that you're using it in the areas you need it, and you're getting bang for buck. But it's definitely the way forward. It's where Scott Guthrie and the team are putting all the investment. It's clearly the choice for any IoT solutions, but we just talked about China. China has some data centers over there as well. They're called Azure's over there. And if you're on the mainland, that's mooncake. And if you want to light up those data centers, then, that's the easiest way. You turn it on, you experiment, you spend some dollars on Azure and you spend some dollars on social media and you see if you get bites. It's the best way to choose for your data store going forward, really.
Sure. No, I can't argue with you there. Well, we got apparently 6 more of these nights to do in the last half of the show, so we better truck along. What comes after data, Adam?
Well, I guess, Azure AD, security. And
so Active Directory services?
Yes. Actually, I wouldn't mind just mentioning, with this data story, it is like I got an email, which was not too long ago, which was basically we write we write software, we ingest a lot of data, we're getting thousands of records a minute. We've been using SQL Server forever. Our schema is fluid. There's lots of logs as well. What should we use? And of course, my answer was Cosmos DB. Right. And then when you say, they'll say, how do I aggregate data and how do I trigger certain events and that type of stuff. You can say, well, you can still replicate some of your non-SQL Cosmos data out for reports and searching.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you start looking at Azure, you start realizing there's just so many products there. There's not just Cosmos DB. There's Data Lake Store. There's Data Lake Analytics.
Oh, sure.
Times, Sites, Data Factory. There's Databricks. There's so many options there, and they're so hard to choose that you're going to start seeing that you just need data architects now to help you.
Right. To organize all that.
Yeah, Microsoft are going to learn that they're giving so much choice. They're giving developers analysis paralysis.
Yeah. Creating new jobs.
This is the paradox of choice problem, right? Given too many choices, people will not choose. Fear of regret is more powerful than actually making a decision.
And it isn't like you're choosing one thing that's very similar to another thing. I mean, these are real architectural decisions that have to be made. They don't understand enough about what these products do and where they're best suited.
Yeah. So I just want to call out something that Azure have. If you just go to Azure and you Google for resources infographics, they've put some standard patterns and practices up there, which are really nice. So I think I just want to when people start looking at the data, they'll get frightened, and Microsoft better sort this out by making it easier to choose. But in the end, you'll find those infographics will help a bit because they're kind of solving this problem.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I'll include a link to that.
All right, cool.
So identity, and I'm kind of surprised to see you getting to identity fourth, but then that's just the IT guy in me. But yeah, identity is next.
Yeah, I think you've got to choose how you're going to do this. And obviously, the ones I suggest people consider are Auth0. Auth0, if you've got less than 7,000 users, it's free. It can get really expensive after that, but people want to log on the way they want to log on if you're dealing with consumers. Now, of course, if we're just a backend system, you can use Azure AD, nice and easy. But you want the security side of things is really important. And I see people look at Auth0 and I see them look at Identity Server, which is a great product. The problem with Identity Server is you need a developer to get that going. And you need not just a developer, you need a great developer. So you need a smart developer.
Or you bring in a contractor, you bring in an expert, you bring in a Brock Allen.
Yes. Oh, well, yes. Or Dominic, yes. So it's good that it's German engineered, so we know it's good quality, don't we? Yeah. But that is not as easy as just going with Azure AD B2C.
Right.
The Azure AD B2C, the documentation is good. There's lots of tutorials and sample projects. I gave one of my guys the job of getting, well, he's used a couple of these, but he's really an Angular developer. He's definitely not a security consultant. And but he got this up and running, and he raved that the tutorials and sample projects made it less frightening than what he thought it was going to be.
That's good.
He thought you were punishing him at first, huh?
I think those full stack developers, they're full stack until you mention, and we want you to be cloud as well,
right?
And throw security in, and now I want you to tell me how much is this stuff going to cost. Then they're not so full stack anymore.
Right. Well, the stack keeps getting fuller, dude. Right. Like It's just a bigger and bigger surface area over time.
Yes. And I should mention something. That Auth0 is cool. It's got all the different options like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all those type of ones. But there's two authentication models that for me are showstoppers. You have to have, you really need WeChat as an authentication.
And again, this is China choice. You're talking about. If you want to be participating in China, you need to be using WeChat as an option.
Yes. Every single person uses WeChat. I haven't seen them have a break from it. They seem to be permanently on it.
Wow.
And if you look at any Chinese person staring at their phone, you don't ask what app because they're all in WeChat. WeChat is like Facebook and the Messenger and how you purchase something. It's everything. So Azure AD B2C has the WeChat option, and Auth0 doesn't. So that's kind of, for me, a big deal, and that's why we always seem to go Azure B2C.
Yeah,
which is a little jewel there.
If you care about China, then why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Why block anyone? Although they block us.
What night are we up to now?
We're looking at number 5.
Okay. So the next thing that I would say is I'd like the devs to learn API management. API management, of course, devs will say, I can document my web API. I'll just get Swagger and throw that in. But, a serious Mr. DevOps will probably walk along and say, we can't just expose our API like that. We want usage quotas and rate limits. And
yeah,
right. That to me is the bigger thing, is that you can't let anybody break you.
That's right. Especially if you, let's just say your service gets the New York Times. All of a sudden, it's more than just giving documentation to developers. We care about security and authentication. We want every person using it probably to have some monitoring and reporting. And of course, we want protection. We want those usage quotas and rate limits. So you can ask the dev to do all that himself, and that is going to be a monster job.
And it's already done. It seems stupid, right? It's built into Azure.
Yeah. Just go into the Azure portal, click on Create a Resource, and choose API Management. Run through a wizard that will ask you a few questions about, just a couple of questions about where are you, and then you give it your Swagger file, and you're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's compelling. Now, the only thing that's not compelling is that part isn't free. So it's not expensive either. I'm just trying to remember the pricings, but it is.
I got the pricing details right here.
Oh,
of
really?
course you do.
Well, I pay attention, man. This is me, So if you, depending on the services you're using, the velocity you're running at, like for devs, it's 9 cents an hour for just doing dev. But you start out at 25 cents an hour for production level, and it goes up as high as, $4.66 for an hour as an enterprise production case. And that's with big caches and distributed across multiple regions and a high level SLA. And so thousands of requests per second.
Yeah. So I can tell you that most customers using it just go with they don't go for the enterprise features, and they're paying a couple $100 a month for that API management. And that gives them a really beautiful modern API gateway. Like, they could have crummy old web services. They could have nasty old ASMX web services. You put this over the top, and all the people that just read that New York Times article are just seeing a beautiful new REST API.
Right.
And they're going, wow, this is cool. Like, this is genuine lipstick on a pig, you know?
Yeah, the basic at 25 cents an hour for a month is $180 per unit. So depending on how many units you use, and that's, capped at 1,000 requests a second. And that's lots.
Yeah, it's great.
I think the real linchpin from going from basic to standard is the identity integration. That's probably going to be a big deal for a certain number of people.
And there's also there's the on-premise authentication in the enterprise version.
Right.
And what is cool about that? Like, we currently have a timesheeting application. It's a service called TimePro, and that we have an API that we expose with that. And there's also some CRM stuff. And now our CRM is currently CRM on-premise.
Mm-hmm.
We have a plan later on to move that to Dynamics, to the cloud. Now, if we were to advertise at the moment, we'd have to advertise the two different APIs or how they are. And later on, when they change, we will then need to inform everyone using that API, I'm really sorry, the API has changed.
Right.
You have to, but if you're using this API management and going for the enterprise features, you put a layer on top of that, and then you have these transforms, and nobody needs to be informed of the plumbing going on and the changes going on in your organization, because you're just showing off that one sexy REST API.
Yeah.
Nice. And that's all part of it is, right? It's just you're providing that capability and you're easily expanding across the planet if you need to.
Yep.
That's right.
It's like the email address that never changes.
That enterprise feature, I think that it seems to be about $1,500 a month.
Yeah, depending on location and currency and so forth. I'm looking at the U.S. region, and it can be $2,800 a month. But
if you think about how much time you could save and dollars that you could save if you had to refactor an API, that's the problem.
Yeah. Well, and 4,000 requests a second, like, you're getting a lot of performance out of this too.
Mm.
But companies much prefer to pay devs to do this stuff than just features like that for some reason.
Well, it's hidden costs versus visible costs, right? Not only the development time, the debugging time, you still have to run the infrastructure. There's all that IT time. There's all of those different pieces. Like, I find it crazy that, they say, well, the cloud's so expensive. Then you actually sit down and do the math of what they're paying for themselves and go, are you sure it's expensive?
It's almost like an insurance policy. You're paying up front and that's all you're going to pay when it comes to those particular APIs. So what, are we actually going to get to 9?
Well, we're at 6 now. Let's at least get 6.
Like a software project, you never actually get there.
No show is ever done, only abandoned.
Yeah, right.
I think the next thing that I tell them that they should learn is logic apps.
Yeah.
I think logic apps are really important for the guys to learn. Many of them probably would have already played with Microsoft Flow, and it is similar. Microsoft Flow comes from Office 365 team, and Logic Apps from the Azure team.
Yeah,
right.
And they probably have come across if this then that. Although I never really saw that in enterprises. It was a thing that people played with, but I didn't see it become part of.
Never got deployed.
Mm.
Yes, it never got there. Now, what's important to understand, at least in the beginning, is what's the differences between Microsoft Flow and Logic Apps.
Mm-hmm.
Flow is cheaper; it's in a shared environment. Logic Apps, they charge a step. The UI is the same, although in Logic Apps, there's just more advanced stuff in there. You can split and merge steps. You look at the JSON and see what's going on.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is, who is the owner? And with Logic Apps, it's in your resource group. You can deploy it with ARM templates. You can parameterize it. You can monitor it with App Insights. It's part of your infrastructure.
Right. You're in control of it.
Yeah. And so once you worked out which way you're going to go, and you should look at both of those things, you just then start automating things. You connect your apps and your services. I'm not kidding. This is so simple. My mum, Donald Trump could do this. This is easy stuff. There is no lines of code to write at all. You're creating tickets, anything that's repetitive, you should be looking at this stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And plus they'll let integration abilities to other SaaS products, things like that, just bringing Salesforce as part of the equation. Like they're really, Logic App is really powerful.
That's a good point, Richard. One of the other things to consider between Flow and Logic Apps is Logic Apps has a lot more of those enterprise ones. Mm-hmm. So you'll see Salesforce and a lot of SAP and all that stuff in those Logic Apps. Mm-hmm. And then, like, if you've never done a Logic App, you just go into the portal, you click Create a Resource, choose Logic Apps, and you connect up a couple of things. Like, there's just no code to write at all. It is. So, like, you could make it so that we want to watch all the tweets. Okay, so we'll just set up a Twitter connector and have them all go into our ticketing system.
Right.
You could, there's a whole lot of criteria you can put there. You could actually say if the search term has a certain hashtag, or you could connect. You could say if the message is negative. Like, I only want the negative ones where people are saying, I'm not happy. And
doing a little sentiment analysis.
Yes. So that is obviously using cognitive services under the covers.
Yeah.
And, but we're talking crazy simple, and you can automate. Now, in the beginning, when you set this stuff up, it's real cheap. But when you have a lot of these going and you get into the swing of things, I see companies paying quite a few dollars for all the Logic Apps. And then that's kind of a good thing. They come to you and complain, I'm paying quite a bit for Logic Apps, and you have a look and go, wow, they're using it for a lot of stuff. You wouldn't give it up, would you?
Right. So presumably it's providing value.
That's right. Yeah. They don't want to do all these tasks manually after they've started using it.
Right.
I just want to mention just one thing on that Logic Apps. Those Logic Apps you don't really have a dev test production system. And they're like one of those things that just happen. I do want to mention that there is a Logic Apps for Visual Studio. So if you're a developer, you can have a look at the Logic Apps for Visual Studio, and then you can put it under a proper dev test production. It takes away the beauty of the how simple it is to use, because now you've got some steps involved. But I think it's really important.
Very cool. Cognitive services.
Well, we've come a long way since Tay tweeting and saying racist things. And I think that one of the things I really care about now with the apps that we're building for all our customers is I want the guys to always be trying to think of smarter ways of doing things. And obviously, if they spend some time using cognitive services, they'll do a pretty good job of things that our competitors don't particularly do. We built this screen. We call her Sophie. As you walk into our office, Sophie recognizes you, shows you what you're working on today, shows your appointments, shows when it's next raining, and tells you when your next holiday is, and also you look happy. And also Sophie is kind of a little bit of an assistant, and she's just using some. I think the guys wrote it just because they wanted to play with cognitive services,
Right?
So and when a client comes in, they can say, "Hey," you can say, "Hello, Richard. You've got a meeting with Yuli in 7 minutes. Take a seat to the left." And it can also sends an email to Penny, the receptionist, and says, "Hey, Penny, Richard doesn't drink coffee. Don't offer him coffee. Offer him an orange juice." That type of thing. And then
I won't drink orange juice either.
Cup of tea.
Yeah.
Or a scotch.
So I'd say the number 8 thing I want them to learn is bots. I think bots are really important. I think I believe that I read something about the Gartner Group that says in, was it 2019 or 2020, we will be speaking more to a bot than we will be to our partner.
Oh,
Okay?
that's so sad.
That's a good thing. I'm gonna.
That's a good thing.
As I'm driving home, I could have a bot. When my wife is asking, "How was your day?" I can have the bot answer it, and then I could be listening to .NET Rocks.
Oh, that wouldn't fly at my house.
Only if she knew. Only if she knew.
Yeah. So the bots will make you an absolute rock star by learning that, and I think that customers are going to expect it. We're doing a bot right now. We're adding it to Sophie. So, you mentioned before about how Cortana and Alexa can talk to each other. Right. We are trying to make a decision whether our Sophie will be able to speak and listen, whether we attach a Google Home or Alexa or a Harman, or just use or do it ourselves with Azure and put a speaker and a mic on it.
So why not Cortana? Or are you using the Cortana engine?
We can do it that way. So it will depend on whether people expect, when they want to speak to something, whether they're used to speaking to Alexa or Google Home. Like, what is going to be the expectation when you walk up to something? There's going to have to be an expectation how you talk to this thing, and I don't think that's been solidified. And also, we don't want to build something if you can just buy something and it works just as well and connect it in.
Maybe you could offer the user a choice, of which assistant front end they would like to use. Yeah,
you could. That's I hadn't even thought of that one. That's a good one. And then I'd have to put a Google Home on one side and Amazon Alexa on the other side of it.
Right.
Yeah, there's lots of possibilities with bots, and they are getting better. And the tooling seems to help a lot, just to sort of get people down the right path. It's not that simple, though. It's a lot of work to do a good job.
Yeah.
Okay, now I think we're at number 9, right?
Number 9.
Okay.
I just want to mention that cognitive services can make your apps crazy smart, but just like what happened with Tay was crazy clever, but you could say, crazy swear words to Tay and she'd just retweet you. So just the fact that she was smart, that the people that implemented it, the developers that implemented Tay, they weren't the guys that built the machine learning. They had a responsibility to do robust testing of it. And it's the same thing for developers doing cognitive services. Cognitive services are smart, but if you're not going to be doing some basic checks for sarcasm and swear words and all the other stuff, you're going to get yourself in the same pickle that the people that did Tay. So yes, you can use cognitive services, and then you can say, look, I'm an AI developer. I use AI. It's certainly going to make yourself seem smart.
Well, there are cognitive services that will filter out and detect things like that already.
Yeah,
you just have to plug into them.
You just got to do the work.
Yes,
it's possible.
Yeah.
All right, number 9, friend. Number 9.
The last one, and I'll leave this to last. It's containers. Now,
Interesting.
I think, yeah. So you'll notice that I swayed away from serverless and things like that as priorities, and maybe that's for me because I don't want to tie myself particularly to something that won't work in China. And,
Interesting.
Now I know some companies care about multi-cloud and they want things to work on Azure and Amazon, and in this case, they probably would want to be careful with serverless.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the way to go is containers, and I tell the guys, Docker is easy, or the orchestration is hard. There's a lot to learn, but Kubernetes will be really be hard for you. But Azure makes it really easy with AKS, and that's what I want them to learn. And what we can do is we can deploy that to Azure, and we can deploy it to, say, Ali Cloud.
Yep.
And that is that's where I want all solutions to be at, where we're supporting the Western market and the Chinese market, and we're deploying to both. And I think that's just the way of the future. And I'm very, very grateful that Microsoft have made Kubernetes user-friendly with their Azure Kubernetes services.
Yes.
I think we're still wrestling to get Windows containers working as well as they should. But certainly the Linux containers work really well.
Yeah, so we support, we go deploying to Linux as well.
Right.
And we're not using Service Fabric.
Yeah, we're not worried about that. You just have to deal with it. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and you said, I appreciate the containers come last because it's very much a change in architectural thinking, a different way to build software for a different reason.
Yeah, that's right. But many developers will go straight for, they want to try the containers and those others. But that's kind of the order that I pitch that I like them to get going in.
I appreciate this order, Adam. It makes a lot of sense from a dev perspective. Like I said, the IT guy in me grabbed identity earlier, but no, I could totally appreciate web, DevOps, data, identity. Totally it makes huge sense to me. That's very logical.
Nice one. Adam, thanks very much for talking to us. It's always a pleasure when we talk in person, and even better when the rest of the world gets to hear our conversation. So thank you.
I'll see you in 12 years, eh?
Yeah. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, actually.
Yeah, we're coming down to Sydney.
Oh, yeah. NDC is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
We're sharing a stage with you, and it'll be an SSW show and then a .NET Rock show, and the audience can see us make shows.
Yep.
And we're going to live stream it as well. So even if you can't make it to Australia, which you should, then you can see what's going on in the best conference in the country for .NET developers.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
All right, Adam. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, and we'll see you, dear listeners, next time on .NET Rocks. .NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net and produced by Pwop Studios, a full-service audio, video, and post-production facility located physically in New London, Connecticut, and of course in the cloud. Online at pwop.com. Visit our website at dotnetrocks.com for RSS feeds, downloads, mobile apps, comments, and access to the full archives going back to show number 1, recorded in September 2002. And make sure you check out our sponsors. They keep us in business. Now go write some code. See you next time.
Got transmitter banned by the FCC. Yes, I'm a